Yes, welcome back to the Magic Sponge podcast, a miracle cure for all your rugby league injury issues. I'm Brien. I'm the guy behind NRL Physio, all the content you see on social media. Co-host James, you are here. It is Wednesday night, a bit late because I have been off on holidays. Mate, finals are great, and even better than that, the Redcliffe Dolphins are into the grand final, mate. We end the show every Sunday night saying up the mighty Redcliffe Dolphins, and they were up on the weekend. Valence Tafare scoring length of the field, classic, carrying guys over the line, and they're playing fellow Dolphins NRL feeder club, the Devils, on I think it's Saturday or Sunday this week. Hoping to get out to the game if I can, mate. Up the Fins, and how'd you enjoy your finals footy?
Yeah, fins up. Echo those sentiments to start off with, Brian. It was good. Really enjoyable week of finals footy. Some really good games, high quality footy. A lot of overreaction from the media for the teams that lost, and a lot of love for the teams that won. It does put the fear in God of you seeing Penrith being Penrith again, though. This time of year, it's just a well-oiled machine. I hate it. I'm kind of sick of them being so good. But they're going to be in and amongst it again. Melbourne look good, but boy, oh boy, Penrith look like they're going to be hard to top. For the Finns, mate, I think we need to talk about this very quickly about Cup, because the Northern Pride were leading the comp pretty much the whole season as well. And the Dolphins went up there, up to Cairns, and gave them the business. Val was a big part of that, scoring length of the field tries. I think I commented on that video you put up on Twitter or X. I was like, how is this guy not a top 30 player in an NRL squad? He's a perfect center wing, or he's a perfect edge player who would definitely be worth a top 30 spot if someone would just roll with him and give him a bit more of a shake. I just don't understand it. I think those guys like a Ewan Aiken type, where they can fill edge and fill center in a pinch, are just so valuable. And Val, to me, looks like a prototype there. And he just does it week in, week out at cup level, but he just has never got a shot at NRL level because he just looks a bit thick to the midriff. But where's the love for the thick boys, Brian? Why can't Big Val do the business as a thick boy?
Mate, I think listeners of the Magic Sponge will know, or anyone on social media who follows me will know how I feel about Val by now. Like, I just love him. He's a cult hero, but just like awesome to watch, and I think an actual genuinely good player on his day. And I was on Boom Rookies today. I went on one of their things, and they were telling me that they've been told he's going back to like Union in New Zealand because no one wants him. And I'm like, that is an
Crazy,
absolute travesty. Like, that is
crazy.
ridiculous to me. I cannot believe it. I am that yeah, that genuinely makes me sad because he is someone who there are some players rolling around in the NRL starting week in and week out that give you nothing compared to, like even if you want to say defensive liability, but the upside of someone like that. I'm always about taking upside, James, and taking upside in someone as fun as Val. Yeah, it definitely makes me sad. To your point about Penrith, I had a sneaky little $50 bonus bet sitting on my account for the last couple of weeks. And after that first half, I went, Penrith aren't going to get any worse odds than this. And I think they were like $3 or yeah, it was something $2.80 or $3.40 or something like that. And I just went 50. I put the 50 down on them because I'm like, they look so good. And credit to the Roosters in that second half. They came back and, made the most of it. But yeah, Penrith looked real good in that first half. Enough for me to, my cheap self. I went, yeah, $50 bonus bet that will put my money where my mouth is in a
Yeah.
way. But yeah, no, really excited. So let's get into the finals, guys. As always, we're on YouTube, so head on over there. Check us out. You know why you're here by now. This is where we talk about all the injuries in the NRL. We cover in-game stuff. We loop it back to recovery time, on-field performance, SuperCoach, and fantasy. Usually I give you a bit of a spiel here about Patreon and all the wonderful things over there. In sad news, I announced to the patrons this week it is taking a permanent break, Patreon, moving forward. Life outside of NRL Physio for me in terms of active care physio, my day-to-day job, family life as well. it's all just getting a bit hectic in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. It was pretty hectic this year, and I struggled to sort of, juggle all the balls in the air that were going on. So something with, especially with active care, how busy it's getting and the developments there in the next 12 months, something had to give. And unfortunately, that thing is Patreon. And that's a bit sad for me because I really did enjoy sitting down and putting aside time for that more analytical side of things every week. I do enjoy sort of, I guess tweaking that part of my brain. So I'm hoping I can find some sort of way to keep doing that in a less formal sense next year. But yeah, I'll just have to see how I go with that one. So yeah, no, you won't have to listen to myself or James flogging off Patreon anymore on this podcast moving forward, because yeah, it won't be there moving forward, unfortunately. But a big shout out to all the people who subscribed over the time, whether you came in for a month and left, or you checked out the injury profiles and stuff like that. A massive, massive thank you to everyone who supported me on that side of things, because it was something that I just didn't have the time to do unless I actually put aside, a part of my working week effectively to do it. And you guys helped to allow that to become a reality, which was great. And I did really enjoy doing it. So yeah, shout out to everyone who helped out there. And yeah, hopefully somewhere down the track we'll be able to get something going again. But otherwise, guys, let's get straight into it. The injury wrap for finals week 1, brought to you by PainPod, which is drug-free pain relief anyone can use. And use the promo code NRLP for 12% off any PainPod products.
I don't know exactly what he's done. I would have thought it was an ankle, but I'm just guessing.
He shouldn't be out for a long period of time. I mean, I'm no doctor. We have to wait for the scans, obviously, but that'd be more positive than negative.
Finals week 1 and the NRLW wrap-up, Brien. So not too much to get through tonight. We'll go through it pretty quickly, I'd assume. First one was Kyle Feldt with the HIA here. I just can't remember when this actually happened in the Cowboys game, mate. Sorry, I've got TikTok brain here. I cannot remember anything longer than a day ago. What happened with Kyle Feldt in this game with the HIA? Was it,
mate? As soon as I say it, you'll remember it was Leo Thompson.
Oh, that's right. Leo Thompson shot
and
out.
It was like the right at the end of the game. So the only reason I included it is because it was pretty much the only HIA of the finals, which was pretty crazy. But also it was at the end of the game, so it didn't get announced whether he passed or failed. But the fact he's been named for this week says to me that he passed, and unless he develops any lingering symptoms, obviously there's no concerns there. So a good week for concussion in round 1. I will bring up, and James, I want to throw to you very quickly on this. Do you think a week off before the grand final is a good idea? Because I think with the new HIA, like 10-day stand down situation, I think there's a storm brewing, and it's going to blow up one of these years where some players going to miss the grand final, and people are just going to lose their minds about it, I reckon. So I'm a big proponent of the week before being, that being the week off. What are your thoughts?
I don't mind it. I think you just need to make a plan of what you're going to fill in that week. So I don't know if that's the state league grand finals, if you've got some NRL stuff, NRLW stuff you can put in there. I think you just need to have rugby league up in lights for a week there. I don't know what that looks like exactly. Some people smarter than me will probably come up with an idea.
Apparently they're looking to move the All-Star game to the end of the season, I was reading the other day. So potentially you could throw that there.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sort of lukewarm on that as an idea, because I don't know how much interest that's going to generate with players looking to get off-season stuff done for the year following and things like that. I don't know. I think so long as you've got an idea of like what you want to play in there, whether it's like, the All-Stars concept over in the USA sports has just turned into a G-up. So I don't know if the NRL will go down that path. Like, you look at the NFL Pro Bowl and you look at the NBA All-Star game, and it's just a joke what they dish up in those weeks. So I don't think you really want to go down the maybe All-Stars route if you've got people just mailing it in. But maybe if there's like competition for like the State League Grand Finals that weekend, maybe if you have maybe NRLW sort of blockbuster games, or if you have like NRLW Magic Round maybe in that weekend, so you can do like all the games of NRLW
Prime Minister's
at a
13.
venue.
Prime Minister's 13 could be another one.
Yeah, I could hear that. Yeah, just something that sort of just takes up a good chunk of the week, so you can obviously build up grand final week, and then you just got rugby in the headlines there. So I don't mind it. I think so long as there's a plan of attack. I think the season's already too long anyway, but If there's something done around the scheduling, then I could see the argument for that. And especially, it's a good one you make about the concussion side of things there. That it's probably not a bad shout there. Anything else you want to add for the week off before grand final? I think it's certainly a hornet's nest waiting to get stirred up, though, Ryan, if there's a HIA later in. So Panthers versus Roosters is what we're going to talk to next. Scotty Sorensen was ruled out pre-game with a hamstring injury, and then we'll probably just touch on Nathan Cleary from a shoulder point of view. Looked pretty good, Brian.
Mate,
Panthers looked good in general, but geez, Nath looked pretty good.
100%. I mainly included him in the run sheet to be like, I was really, really, well, not really, really surprised, but really stoked with how well he performed. Coming off that, I thought he might be, and certainly the last time he came back from when he had that shoulder, it was, and they were like full dislocations. He had, significant structural damage, whereas reportedly this time he doesn't, whether that's Penrith just being a little bit cagey or not. But I just thought he took the line on. He didn't seem to have any hesitation whatsoever, which gave me, like a lot of confidence. Like, obviously he knows what he's dealing with this time around, so that would give him a lot of confidence from the last one. But yeah, really, really impressed. I've had a few people ask, how is it moving forward? It doesn't, like, a week isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. He was obviously pretty good to go last week. He's going to be pretty good to go again in a couple of weeks' time. So, but there still is that risk of if he lands on it the wrong way, but he'll be practicing, he'll spend the next 2 weeks, practicing how to land to protect that shoulder and stuff like that. So I think, it's rinse and repeat from what we said. Scotty Sorensen with the hamstring, mate, this is a year of the hamstring. We keep saying it. It's just happened. It's already the highest occurring, soft tissue strain or soft tissue injury in the NRL. And this year has just been ridiculous. So we've got another hamstring re-injury. They've said they're hopeful for him to be back in a couple of weeks' time, but he apparently suffered it late in the week at captain's run almost. He was only ruled out an hour before the game, effectively. So I'd be surprised if he's back in 2 weeks on that news. I think, there was a few rumors floating around that he might miss the rest of the year. I would be less surprised by that than him being back in 2 weeks from a hamstring re-injury. And I think even if he does return, you've got that risk of, another re-injury again. So that's a risk. What did you see from Cleary, mate? Did you obviously thought he looked pretty good too?
Yeah, the play that stood out for me was the Connor Watson charge down, and the first person there was none other than Nathan Cleary, just doing the business, laying out for that tackle. I was super impressed with how he went and played through it. Obviously got a 4-minute early mark for no real good reason there, apart from let's just get him off the field just in case. But yeah, I thought he looked really, really, really good. And all of a sudden the Panthers went from, clunky attack, struggling to put points on, to just a well-oiled, just ruthless killing machine. They're gonna be hard to beat. I think, it's sort of control C, control V for the Penrith Panthers this year. Once it gets to September footy, it's a bit of a scary prospect for those other teams alive in the competition. We'll move on to the Storm v Sharks game next, Brian. So no injuries out of this one, apart from Jesse Ramien, who got ruled out with an ankle injury pre-game. Sharks missed him on that round. I know Sifa Talakai is nearly like for like, but geez, Jesse Ramien's been good this year for the Sharks, and I thought he could have really offered a point of difference matching up against Jack Howarth there.
Yeah, mate, I put my hand up and say I didn't check this one too heavily because I missed this game, and then in the post-match, Fitzy kind of fobbed it off as it was mostly just precautionary, bringing him off. So I was like, it's more than likely a lateral ankle sprain, probably nothing too much to worry about there. But going back and having a look at the mechanism, because it did happen a little bit before he came off, I think that was why, another reason why, is that I kind of looked around when he came off and didn't see too much happen. But then when I went back and had a look, it was a couple of minutes before, like a pretty significant high ankle, sprain mechanism. So they're tough. Like, it's tough to turn that around. I mean, we're seeing with someone like Jason Saab, who's still out, now 3 weeks down the track from a pretty significant high ankle sprain mechanism. I think Jesse Ramien, as you said, they missed him. I'm not super confident that he'll be able to play this week. And it's also one with high ankles, when guys come back, someone like Ramien, who relies on that power, that drive, that stepping off that foot. I just wonder whether, we'll see the best of him this weekend, even if he plays. So, yeah, but I think you spoke to just how much they miss Ramien. And if he's out this week or he's not at 100%, I think that'll really affect him again. Hey.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that would have been a really good point of difference for them v the Cowboys, but they're gonna have to probably do it without him, I'm assuming. So yeah, that's a big blow for the Sharkies. On the Cowboys, we're going to go through their game versus the Knights. Yeah, another good game of footy there, Brian. But Bradman Best was ruled out pre-game for the Knights with a hamstring injury. Hamstring number 5 for Bradman this year, documented, I believe, Brian. That is entering into Jesse McLean areas, dare I say, in terms of soft tissue re-injury rates there. Like, Jesse's obviously king of the soft tissue concern, but geez, Bradman Best has had his fair share this year, despite some big moments up and down here for Bradman Best.
Yeah, mate. I find this an interesting one because that's the fifth. Yeah, you said the fifth one, but it's like every time it happens, and it happened again this time. It was like the reports. It was almost like they tried to emphasize, obviously, the source from the club or whoever, like, oh, it's not the hamstring that he most recently injured, that was his left or his right or whatever. And I'm like, guys, he's had 5. Like, by now, I think he's had 3 on one and 2 on the other. I'm like, it doesn't really matter which one it is. Like, something's going wrong there. Like, this is 5 now. So I think the whole, like, which one is it? Was it the right? Was it the one he most recently? That kind of information isn't really all that. Yeah, like I don't put much stead in that information at this point when we're talking about the 5th hamstring issue in a season. So yeah, look, I mean, 5 in a season, I would usually say even if it was a significant hamstring injury at the end of a season, if it's isolated, by the next year I wouldn't really stress about it. But yeah, I mean, 5 in a season gives me some pause. I don't know about you, like from a SuperCoach perspective, particularly like that left edge for the Knights with a fully fit Ponga and all that kind of stuff is always a good one. I know you picked Best as a bit of a pod at times this year. He's not someone who it'd have to be a pretty strong case to start him over somebody else, just purely because 5 is a lot. I mean, the off season is a long time to get on top of these things, but yeah, I don't think I can't think of another time where I've seen 5 in a season, to be honest.
No, I can't either. He will be someone Supercoach wise I'd look at if he bottoms out in price. I sort of look for Bradman. If he has a bit of a dry spell, he has 4 or 5 games without scoring a try, then I normally sort of think, well, eventually that Knight's edge will click into gear and he'll get a double or a triple. And he's just got that sort of line break, tackle break ability that makes him quite attractive from the Supercoach point of view. But I agree with you, next year, I probably want to see him do the business for a period of time before I think about bringing him in. So that'll be where I stand on him. We can probably move straight on to Tom Trbojevic next, Brian, out of the Bulldogs Manly game. So Tom's carrying a medial knee ligament injury and then also that AC joint injury. Like, pretty seriously impressive effort for Tom to play through both of those things for Manly and do what he did. Obviously, he's not 100% fit. Like, that's very clear and very evident. But he's really, biting down on the mouthguard and gutting it out. So I guess what should we expect from Tom Trbojevic this week is probably much of the same, I'd say, Brian, won't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, a lot of people are sort of like, oh, he got through that game, reportedly didn't suffer any aggravations necessarily, but it's still a game of footy. Like, I think even though he hasn't copped a knock to it, like, he's still got through a game of footy and he's still going to be super sore coming out of that. And he barely has a good leg to stand on at this point in time. Like, he's got a shoulder with a grade 3 AC, a knee with a medial. Interestingly, on the medial, I was doing some prep right before we came on here, and he didn't have the knee strapped up early in the Bulldogs game of round 26, but when he was coming off holding the AC joint, he did have it strapped up. So he obviously suffered the MCL injury in that game. So I'll hopefully get some time over the next couple of days to actually go back and try and find the mechanism there to see just how significant that was. But yeah, he just, like eye test wise, he didn't have that explosiveness, that tackle bust. And look, the Dogs are a really good defensive side, don't get me wrong. But I put up a stat today, which has been a bit controversial amongst some people I've seen, sort of being like, how do you compare one game to the entire season? But I do think when it's that significant, where you're talking 26 runs for 180 odd meters for Turbo, like usually 26 runs for me from fullback, where you get, some of those free meters off kick chases and that kind of thing. I would expect more than 100. And I think it was by far his lowest game of the season in terms of meters per run on average. So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. I thought you could see, I think it was on the kick out break or try where he, tried to protect that shoulder in the way he was landing and stuff like that. So he's obviously got ways a bit like Cleary where he's trying to protect himself. But Tom Turbo at, let's say he's at 80, 85% at the moment. That's still better than, the vast majority of people in the comp. So I think the main thing is I just wouldn't expect a 6-day turnaround, so a bit of a shorter turnaround in finals terms as well. I just I'd be surprised if he comes out and is just a totally different player this week. The risk of aggravation will still exist because even though he didn't, necessarily blow his shoulder up or blow his knee up, it's going to take him 2 or 3 days to get over the game because it's going to be sore just from footballing activity. It sounds like you're kind of on a similar wavelength there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's probably what we should expect out of Tom this week. I thought, the fact that he played as well as he did last week to me is as impressive as Nathan Cleary, to be honest. If he's managing those two separate concerns, that's unbelievable. It makes you wonder, like, if we had a fully fit Tom Trbojevic, what would we see out of the Manly Sea Eagles? It's just getting him fit to this time of year is always going to be a struggle for them. We'll move on to a couple more names here, Brian. So one from the Dolphins, Trai Fuller. Really sad news on a confirmed ACL injury for Trai. What would we expect in terms of return from an ACL injury in 2025? We're probably mid-year at best, aren't we?
Yeah, mate, this one hurt a lot, to be honest, watching the game and just, I mean, he is, if I love my Val Tafare, like Trai Fuller, I'm a big like Q Cup All Stars kind of guy. I think I've said that before. Like I love those Q Cup guys getting a run in the NRL and showing what they're made of because Trey's been lighting up, Q Cup for years and years. So for him to get his chance and for people to kind of see, like for that to transition over to the NRL and him be nearly as good as he looked in Q Cup is awesome. So yeah, thankfully they signed him to a 2-year extension not long ago, so he'll be well looked after. There'll be no like Ronald Volkman kind of situations here. Who actually, now that I say that name, that's an interesting one. We should look into what Ronald Volkman is doing these days because
haven't heard, actually.
he's kind of had that whole year off, not being supported with his recovery, so that'd be interesting. But so mid-season next year, and I wouldn't expect him back to his best till the following year, just because he's a player who relies on. He relies on that change of direction, explosive speed, that kind of thing. And that's usually not back until that second season back when you've had a full off season to kind of work through those things and build performance. So yeah, big blow for the Finns. Just hopefully Hammer can stay fit. We're pretty okay in the outside backs though, I think. So I'm not, like it's not a dagger. I think as long as Averillo hangs around, Averillo can always go to fullback and then slot someone in the centers or something like that. So hopefully we can cover it in the meantime. But yeah, just super, super devastated for Trai mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a real bad one because God, he's looked so like we love Short King season here on this Magic Sponge as well, Brian, and seeing the Short King rip up brings great joy to me as someone who's a football enthusiast and a Short King myself. So prayers up for Trai. Hopefully he recovers quickly. Lastly, we're going to wrap the NRLW, Brian. So Stacey Waaka from the Broncos, he's had a great season on the wing there. It's a fibula fracture. It's a big blow for us because she came across from, I think she came from New Zealand Sevens, didn't she, to come across for the Bronx, and she's been unbelievable. So big blow for the Broncos, who are flying in the NRLW at the moment. And also Nita Maynard and Lillian Yarrow, both with high ankle sprain injuries. And I think you put videos of both of these up on the socials, Brian. There were nasty hip drop tackles for these two players. And I think subsequently there were suspensions for both of those tackles.
Mate, the hip drop in the W is going off at the moment. Going off. Like, there is a lot. I think friend of the show, Sienna Lafipo, was actually quite lucky to not cop a bit of I think she did one and landed on the ground right before Nita Maynard's one as well. And because she landed on the ground, it wasn't, it was just a warning rather than anything too crazy. But yeah, there's a lot of hip drop tackles rolling around at the moment. So hopefully the girls can work on those. And because, we've got a lot of players sitting out at the moment with high ankles, MCLs, these kind of things. And a lot of them could have been a lot worse. Like, I think it was just pure luck where the way that they landed, it wasn't even worse than it was. Stacey Waaka with the fibula fracture. That's season over for her. Unfortunately, for any New Zealand Sevens fans out there, I'm not sure what the schedule looks like for you guys, but usually a 6 to 8 week recovery, provided that there's no, major joint injury or anything like that. You're usually looking at 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's a wrap up, Brian. So we've got through everything there. We're going to go straight into the questions this week. So not too many to get through tonight, but a few curious ones with finals on the line. And dare I say it, sudden death footy. I love using that term at this time of year, Brian. Everything's sudden death. You're going to die if you don't get through. Your season's dead and buried. So firstly, is Victor Radley a chance of playing this week? He's been diagnosed as a scapular fracture. You might sort of think back to Cooper Cronk days with that. And I guess with that in mind, he's got I think it's week 3 back for him this week. Is he risking further damage if he comes back? Is he risking further damage of the scapular fracture? Do you rate a chance of him playing this week? What do you think, Brian? This is a pretty interesting one, seeing what happened with Cooper Cronk back in, was it 2018, 2019 grand final? That was 19, I think,
19,
was it?
Yeah, I think 19. Yeah. Like, I think in normal circumstances, I'd say no chance. Like, I've heard that the fracture itself, like Cronk's was, if you imagine your shoulder blade is a big triangle that sits on your back and kind of, I guess most people know your shoulder blade as on the back, or on your back, but there's part of the shoulder blade that extends into the actual shoulder joint out on the shoulder. It makes up the socket of the ball and socket of your shoulder joint. And I've heard that the fracture for Radley is actually through that socket. So through the socket and out into the triangle part of the scapula as well. So when I first heard that, I was like, oh, he's at long odds, to come back. And the question is he risking further damage if he does? Like we saw with Cronk, how much they needed to hide him, to try and prevent that risk of further damage. The thing with Cronk, though, was that he'd already completely snapped it. So you're not necessarily, like, there is a risk of further damage because you don't have that shoulder blade functioning at 100%, but you're not going to make the actual fracture any worse because it was already completely snapped, which is just mental to talk about. But with Radley, if he's only like partially fractured or something like that, and especially if it's through that socket, you're starting to talk about cartilage, joint, these kind of things. Oh, yeah, I would just be, without knowing the exact details of it, I was just shocked that he was named this week. And especially because he's a forward, you're not going to be able to hide him like a Cooper Cronk. So 3 weeks, you're not going to get much bone healing done in that time. I'd actually almost be more confident if he did get surgery, but reportedly he avoided surgery because surgery, at least you're going to get pins and plates in there to kind of stabilize it. And maybe you can kind of, risk it then because the plate is stabilizing it. But if he's avoided surgery, there hasn't been what bone healing's happened in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, James. Like it's not going to be much.
Not a lot.
Think.
Yeah.
So I'm not super confident on him playing, but at this time of year, risks, get taken. So potentially it is something that's going to be done. I know you spoke about is he the difference maker for them? So how do you feel about this situation?
It's a weird one, mate. I just don't know if he's the main thing that's going to get the Roosters over the top here. So I don't know if him playing with risk of re-injury in the game and losing one of your 17 is worth it, to be fair. I don't know what Trent Robinson's thinking is. I don't know if he feels like Victor's the main guy here, if he's the main character that needs to come through for them in the clutch. I just feel like they've already lost 2 guys that are in more key positions that I think are going to have bigger impacts in terms of like Sam Walker and Brendan Smith. So I don't know. I don't really see like a Cronk level of sort of impact that he can sort of make on this side, given the depth of squad that they have, given the position that he's playing. So I don't really know. I don't see it personally. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, mate. I'm on the same sort of position. Like I just don't know. Like it's sudden death footy, as you say, and you love saying that.
I love it.
It'd be good. It'd be good to be part of that one day as a Finns fan in the NRL. But I digress. I just don't know whether the juice would be worth the squeeze at this point in time, even in finals time.
Yeah, fair shout. So question number 2 is about Nicho Hynes. So do you think Nicho coming back early from his ankle injury has anything to do with his perceived poor form? I was going to say poor form there, but I don't think his form's been that bad, to be honest, Brian. I don't know. I feel like Nicho Hynes is unfairly maligned a lot of the time because I tell you what, if he was off contract at the end of the year, every club in the NRL is lining up to get a piece of Nicho Hynes in their team. So there's this perception of, doesn't get it done in the big moments, not finals, built for finals, not built for, Origin as well. There's that sort of lingering concern. But seriously, if this guy was off contract, every team wants him in their team, don't they? Or am I just making that up?
Mate, I would take him at the Fins in a heartbeat.
I would take me the Broncos in
Oh.
less than one heartbeat.
Yeah, I just don't. He certainly hasn't had that dominant finals or Origin performance as yet. But I saw a comment today, and this is coming from a bias SJ lover, but it's the second coming of SJ with the Warriors, right? Like when the Warriors do poorly, it's all SJ's fault. Like,
Very true.
SJ's useless. Yeah. What's he doing? That kind of thing. It's when the Sharks aren't doing well, it's just it's Nicho. It's all Nicho, and I was surprised that he came back early from his ankle injury purely because of the tibia fracture component. I thought that was, I thought it'd take him till finals week 1 to return from that. So the fact he came back and had a couple of games sort of towards the end of the season was a bit earlier than I expected. But on the eye test, I think this question is probably born from, I saw a video floating around from Willie Mason's podcast today, and he was talking about, he hasn't looked 100%, hasn't been taking on blindsides, that kind of thing. In watching just with the eye test, I think he's looked a little bit hesitant, but I wouldn't say too much. And once again, I've pulled out the stats for Turbo with the run meters. I was looking today at all the stats. The only stats that have really dropped for Nicho since he came back are his receipts. So I've got him here. We're looking most of the year he touched the ball you're looking at mid 60s to mid 70s, really, 65, 76, 76, 63. He had one down at 53, but then 68, 66. So he touches the ball a lot. In the last 3 games since he's come back from that injury, 47, 57, and then 43 in the game against the Storm on the weekend. So, but his run meters have been fine. I know run meters aren't everything, but his tackle bust, he's gone over 100 meters the last 2 weeks, 106 against Storm, 101, which is pretty standard for him looking throughout the year. He did have 1 week where he went 202. But other than that, he's usually around that early to mid hundreds. So not a massive drop off. So I just I just question what the game plan is there in terms of Nicho touching the ball less. I don't know whether that's an ankle injury thing, whether they know he's not 100% and they're just not giving him the ball as much. But I think there's anything, he just seems to cop a massive criticism bomb whenever the Sharks don't do their thing. And I don't really agree with that. And I know you don't either.
No, no. I'm probably on the side of slurping Nicho rather than being very critical of him. I will say that with hand on heart and hand on dick as well. But I just think he's just unfairly criticised, really, to be honest. And I don't think he's been that bad. I think, the Sharks have been a very good football team for the last 3 years. This concern of, Nicho doesn't get it done in games. This was never an issue when he's winning Dally M's, but all of a sudden he loses a game of finals footy and this conversation happens again, or he loses a game of Origin and this game happens, or this conversation happens again. I think, the only way to dispel it is to get the monkey off your back and win footy games. I get that. But yeah, I think when you look at Nicho and his importance to that Cronulla team, it can't be overstated, where the Sharks were before he came on board as well. They were sort of a middle, lower ranking team off the back of their grand final success in 2016, but then they went through a bit of a lean trot there, and then they brought Fitzgibbon in. He was the first guy he brought in was Nicho Hynes. You can't look back and say, "Oh, that was a bad decision." It's been a great get for the Sharks. I think Nicho's been awesome for their team, and he still will be moving forward. I think they just need to figure out, is it an Atkinson, Trindle 7 and 6 and Nicho at fullback, or is it, Nicho at 6 or 7 with Trindle or Atkinson? I think they just need to nut out what their halves combo is and just roll with it and stick with it because, they've got a good all-round team, the Sharks. I think they definitely didn't dish up their best in week 1 of the finals, but they're a good football team. I think they can do it on their day, anywhere, anytime. Question 3, Brian, is about what Jason Taumalolo has been going. So before round 12, he was at 98 metres per game, I think is what we've mentioned here. And then since then, 145 metres per game. So it's kind of back to the dominant force that we sort of know of, Jason Taumalolo. It doesn't seem to be as limited by his knee notes. Have you sort of noticed anything from an eye test perspective or observed anything from a minutes point of view as well?
Yeah, mate. I just wanted, I think this is a great question to bring up because, I wanted to give the Cowboys medical staff and Taumalolo himself a massive shout out because that's with the full knowledge that they all hate my guts, especially their doctor, as we spoke about in recent weeks. But this is a guy who, at the start of the season, this is all you were hearing about from the Cowboys. Is this is the worst contract ever, on $1 million a season. Degenerative, the thing came out after week 1 or week 2 where they managed his minutes to the floor, and it came out that he had this degenerative knee thing that nobody had known about. And then it was how could you have him on the contract? How could you only be playing him, 25 minutes a game or whatever it was, and these kind of things. Mate, eye test wise, and the stats back it up. Taumalolo has been great in the second half of the year, and I think it's gone underreported. I don't think it's been talked about enough because it was covered ad nauseum at the start of the year, and I just think, look, he's not making 250 meters like he used to, back in his heyday. But he's a different style of player now, and he's playing really well. And he was a massive reason that the Cows won that game the other night. I thought he was really, really
agreed.
good. 70 odd, I think it was 70 odd meters post contact as well in that 145. So he's being met pretty quickly and he was busting through. So yeah, like a massive shout out to everyone involved with getting him a lot better because it totally vindicates how they treated him earlier in the season because he's been absolutely killing it. It's a situation that we spoke about and said, look, this is a situation you cannot be confident about moving forward. You don't know. He might look good for 6 weeks and then have an aggravation and have to sit down. The only thing that counters that is really, really good medical management and load management, and that's obviously what has happened for Taumalolo to get to where he is. So I think it's a story that should be covered more. How Taumalolo, how he's really flipped that early season concern around purely because of the massive coverage from earlier in the season when everyone was blowing up about it. I'm not saying he's, it's the best contract in the NRL and all of a sudden he's worth $1 million a season. But it's certainly not at the levels of, that everyone was carrying on about at the start of the year, that it's the worst thing that they've ever seen. What have you thought about him recently?
Recently, I thought the second stint that he had in the game the other night was very, very, very good. That was sort of like momentum shifting. It was 10 meters on the front, quick play. He was really, really good the other night. So, and it was the first time I think even Joey Johns in the commentary was like, oh, Taumalolo's got a bit of juice. He was a bit surprised as well. So I think it's probably, to your point, it's flown under the radar with a lot of people, even in the commentary setting or people that cover the game. And it's good to see, and I think it probably echoes your point of it really vindicates how the Cows were managing him at the start of the year because obviously he's coming good by the end of the year. Maybe they have sort of been in sudden death footy situations where they're going to lean into those guys a little bit more and play them bigger minutes. So maybe it's a bit of a combination of the knee's going pretty well or as good as it can be, and then they're just playing him bigger minutes at this time of the year to get him through as best they can. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he's been really good. Last question, Brian, is about your early tips for breakout players in SuperCoach next year. So these might be guys on an injury bounce back, or these might be guys that you just think there's been shades of throbbing and they're going to fully throb next year. So do you have anyone early doors that you think in 2025 could be really, really good from a SuperCoach point of view?
Yeah, mate, I haven't done much injury thoughts yet. I'll try and do that over the off season and come up with a couple of buys of the year again. We'll do that episode with Simo and try and come up with our Tommy Talau or our Jermaine Asako again. It's my turn. You guys have had one each year, so I've got to come up with
You
some
do.
throbber
Yeah, you do for
outside
one.
back. Yeah, I've got to come up with it. So I'm going to be putting some research in there, I can tell you. But my sort of ones is that even though they're going to be at mid-price, I think Blaze Talangi, Paul Alamotti sort of going, being at, Alamotti's already there. but Blaze Lungy going over to Penrith as well. I love those mid-price, mid to even a little bit higher price CTWs, a bit like your Jacob Kiraz from this year, who you can just see that if things go right for them, they are going to become like the top echelon. And I think both of those guys have that capacity. The other one is if Kevy can sort his brain out, mate, and drop his son, I think Blake Moser is a gun. He's defensively, he needs to improve, but that's something that I think can be taught, especially in a hooker. So if Kevy sorts his brain out, Blake Moser would be an absolute gun, mate. You are a SuperCoach expert on here. Hit me with, I think you've got actually a pretty good list of some good ones.
Got a few. Well, it's a bit of a random compilation here, Brian. It's a bit of a mixtape of selections here, but a bit Cowboys heavy is what I've noticed from this. So from the eye test in the finals, Hyland Lukey looks the absolute business. Like, I think he's going to, if he can get 80 minutes of the Cowboys next year with Fini Fuyaki moving on to the Finns, he's probably going to wear maroon, I think, as well, because I look at him as being a really good complement for Jeremiah Nanai. So I think Hyland Lukey is probably the one you want to start with next year. I also like the look of Viliami Vailea. It's his first year of first grade up at the Cowboys there. He's been really solid in the centre position. Val's moving on. I think he's got good job security. I think the attacking stats will come there. He's young. He's ascending. He was always highly regarded in that Warriors system. So I think you bet on the talent there with Viliami Vailea. And the last one from the Cowboys, especially, that I'm very, very keen on is Scotty Drinkwater. I think if he's goal kicking, he is probably in the realm of Kalen Ponga's must-have territory. I think if he's in draft, he's probably my number 3 overall pick above Kalen Ponga, is what I'll say early doors, if he's goal kicking, because he won't get disrupted with Origin. I think the Cowboys, as we've seen this year, can pull points out of here, there, and everywhere. I think it really is probably Cleary, Nicho Hynes is 1 and 2, or you can alternate them however which way you want it until proven otherwise. But I think Scotty Drinkwater, if he's goal kicking, he is in that territory there with Kalen Ponga as well, in that sort of upper echelon. Like, I think after them, it's a big drop off, but I think they're the top 4. If he's goal kicking, if he's not goal kicking, he's probably in that, would you say like 6, 7 sort of range ballparks? It's not a big difference, but he's an elite SuperCoach performer. But my God, Brian, if he's goal kicking for the Cowboys there in a team that scores points deluxe, he could be legitimately like an absolute league winner. So they're the ones from the Cows. So the other ones I've just got my eye on in the offseason to see what happens is Carter Gordon from the Gold Coast. Obviously, War Wallaby Gold, which doesn't mean much when you come across the NRL, when you actually got to do it against boys that can actually play footy. But he's, his size, his speed, his skills. If he plays 6 or 7 at the Gold Coast and maybe again goal kicks, you got to believe the Gold Coast will be better next year as well. I think if they get a bit better injury luck, I think Des Hasler with another year in that system. I just think the Gold Coast probably underperformed a little bit this year, probably a little bit young. But I don't know how Carter Gordon fits in that setup. I don't know whether he's more of a centre selection, whether he's a 6 selection, whether he can't really play fullback, can he? Like, there's Jaden Campbell, Kinney, and Brimo. Like, you can't have another fullback there. I'd be curious to see how they sort of slot him into that team, because they're not signing him on that money to play him in reserves for next season. So I think you're going to see him somewhere in that setup, and that'll be one to watch. The other ones, Jarrell Skelton from the Tigers, big, strong, tackle-busting machine. He's going to be Greg Marju S 2.0. He may not score as many tries as Greg Marju, but you never know. If he's playing left wing for the Tigers, they'll score enough points because they leak enough points, so they've got to put them on if they're going to beat teams. And I think Benji Marshall's attackingly inclined. I don't think he'd be a bad selection at all. He's probably going to be fairly highly priced, though. The other one's from the Storm. So Trent Loiero is one I've got my eye on. He's been rock solid there as a 13 for the Storm, but he doesn't play 80 minutes. I think if the bench sets up like, Trent Loiero might play close to 80 minutes, I think he could be a must-have. I always thought of Trent Loiero as like, Dallas Johnson 2.0, pretty immobile, a bit of a plotter. But, mate, he's a giant. He's a huge human being. There was the photo I sent to you on the socials with Queensland Maroons in their, like, their photo where they had the whole squad. And, mate, Loiero's head and shoulders above all these boys. He's, like, pretty comparably sized to Lindsay Collins, who, as we know, Lindsay Collins is a big human being. But Trent Loiero is a big unit. He's big timber. So if he can play sort of close to 80 minutes in the middle in that role, whether he's second row or front row for eligible, I don't know for next year, but he's one I've definitely got my eye on. Obviously, Billy Slater brought him into the squad. He brought him in for a reason. He obviously likes what he sees there. He's been in down that Melbourne system. They always produce good middles, good solid workers. He's one that I think could be of value. The other one there is Jack Howarth, the myth. We've talked about Jack Howarth for how many years in SuperCoach, but he's playing really solid footy in the centres for the Storm of all positions. So I think depending on what he's priced at to start the season, I think you might be able to get a bit of value there. He might be centre and second row eligible, which would be even better. So he'd be one I'd keep an eye on as well for the 4th or 5th year running. And then the last one that I don't know if he's going to be relevant Supercoach wise, but I just loved what I saw to him at the end of the year, which was Ty Munro. So obviously he had the recurrent collarbone fractures, and Souths were gone. There was nothing to play for that footy team. And Ty Munro came out in those last 2 weeks against it was the Panthers and who they have the week before the Panthers, Brien. I can't. It was the Roosters as well, I think, or
Yeah,
Roosters Panthers in the last two, like the two best footy teams probably of the season. And mate, Ty Munro worked his ass off, played his guts out, scored long range tries. The week against Penrith, he lost his mum and his uncle the day or the week of the game, and he still played. He scored 2 tries. Like, a guy who's 19 or 20, like, what if there's a scenario where Wayne says to Latrell, you're playing centre and Ty Munro is your fullback? I just think the sky's the limit for this guy. I think there's a lot to love there. Wayne's in town. Alex Johnson probably isn't back from the Achilles there for the early part of the season. I don't think it'll be touch and go. But Ty Munro could be someone who's really, really worthwhile having a stab at there, I reckon. And honestly, Brian, I just was so impressed with his end of season for a young guy. He's played not much first grade footy. He was in the contest every time there was a knock on. He was geeing the boys up. He was going coast to coast. You could tell first grade footy means a lot to this kid. And I just loved what I saw. So I want to back the talent in there for Ty Munro next year. I reckon he's a big one to watch, Brian. What do you reckon about that?
love it, mate. You have nails. I love your Scotty Drink call if he's goal kicking. I hadn't even thought of it, but yeah, that'd be tasty. And Carter Gordon, yeah, I think surely like centre at worst, but potentially even a spot in the halves. You've just got to fit so many spine guys in there. I think Jaden Campbell's shown some good signs there at 6. So whether you go that and Keeney and then, your centers, then Carter Gordon and Brimo. It's like I still think Brimo should be fullback, even though Keeney looked good. But yeah, like there's a lot of pieces, a lot of guys who play similar kind of games too that you've got to, or positions that you've got to fit into that team at the Gold Coast. And you've still got some good outside backs there, like Phil Sammy and these kind of guys. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one at the Gold Coast, mate. Let's go on to the Bundy Mixer picks. You've smoked me this week. You are the better bloke. After I had a world of a week last week, I've come back down to the dungeons. What'd you score last week? And then what are your plans? We're getting down to the business end. It's a bit harder to find like point of differences. Have you got any for us?
So 510 was my score, Brian. So I went Cam McInnes, Simon Mataufa, who I boosted, Livia Koenig, Maddie Burton, who I boosted, Isabel Kelly, Callan Ponga. So 510 was my total of that. This round, I probably want to stick with Simon Mataufa. Like, she's back. She's playing the full game there. Georgia Hale's not playing the full game for the Gold Coast anymore, so I think she's just a no-brainer as a middle selection. Same with Olivia Koenig at second row. She's just scoring huge points. I do want to throw in Melly Hufanga this week for a bit of a run. She's had 2 down weeks where she scored in the teens, but she's got a huge score in her, and I just wonder, is this a week for Melly Hufanga? Because the Broncos have been putting up so many points, and the tries seem to be evading her. Gail Broughton's come back, and like I said last week, she has just got the Broncos humming. I kind of want to get on Melly Hufanga this week. She's a heart pick of mine. It hasn't worked out before, but I want to be on her for the week that she goes ballistic. And I missed out early in the year when she got 4 tries. But maybe, just maybe, there's a world where she scores a few more this week. In terms of the NRL players, Brian, it's a bit of a coin flip here for me for these 3 positions. So it's Cam McInnes or Reece Robson at hooker. It's Nicho or DCE at half, and then it's Strinky versus Teddy at fullback. I think you can make a coin flip for any of those guys, and that's probably how I'm going to roll in through my team this week upcoming. Tell us your score and what your plans are this week in the mix, mate.
Yeah, mate, I have 454, so I boosted Isabel Kelly and Jerome Hughes. Same team as the week before, as I kind of said, and Tegan Berry decided to go out against the West Tigers, who are dead last in the W, and score 7 or something like that. I was like, what the hell? What the hell? That absolutely killed me. So, Isabel Kelly had a bit of an injury concern at the back end of the game. She's been named. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but if she's playing, I can't go away from her. Interestingly, just for anybody interested, I've said that 3 times, but what's her name? Jess Surgis, hoping to be back for the grand final. So, yeah, that MCL must have been quite significant for her. Tommy Talau, even dating Tommy Talau, hasn't allowed her to get back any quicker which is, it shows you that must be a significant one. But that, mate, the Roosters W naming her the next week, and now she's out till the grand final. That's
Good.
yeah,
Good
it's getting
shenanigans.
on the Roosters NRL side, like the way that they treat injury info. So that's a bit interesting. But I'll be boosting Tau for this week as well. I wish the Mixer had draft, mate, because if the Mixer had draft, I would have gone in like 20 comps and I would have owned Olivia Kernick in every single one of those comps. I was so high on her in like the preseason of the W, and she's just killing it. She was a bit quiet at the start of the season, but yeah, she is just proving to be a lock for that second row spot. She looks so good, laying on tries, scoring tries herself, and work rate as well. So yeah, love what Koenig is doing at the moment. I'm going to go Teddy. He's in and he's boosted. I think I've got Hynes and Blake Brayley at the moment, and I've just got to hope. Like, I'm trying to make up ground. So I'm like, what conceivably could happen in terms of the biggest scores that could happen this week? And I think we've seen from the Cows that they can let in 40 points. It can happen. I can't see, someone like the Roosters necessarily letting in 40 points at this point in time, and even the other way around. Like, that's why I've gone Teddy in and boosted, because can the Roosters do something there? But I'm like, I could see the Cows letting in 40 points, so I'm going to go Hynes and Blake Brayley and just hope that happens, and hopefully they're not too highly owned and I can make up some ground. But other guys, that is a wrap for the week. A bit of a shorter one, although not by much. We do find a way to ramble, you and I, James. If you like the pod, give us a review and recommend to a friend. Mate, I'm not sure whether we either do one this Sunday or next Sunday. So we'll see how we go in terms of the number of injuries. We thought we didn't have much to talk about tonight, but we found a way. So there'll either be another pod this Sunday or next Sunday, leading into the grand final. Might be after the prelims. We might come on and talk about some big injury situations, unless there's some big injuries that happen this weekend. James, is your tip for the grand final? I think last we spoke, you said obviously Storm and Panthers, but Sharks the dark horse. Are you sticking with that for the moment? Is that kind of where you stand, or have things changed since week one?
For now, much the same. For now, I think I said, well, what my thoughts were, whoever wins out of whoever wins out of Melbourne and the Sharks is probably going to be the grand final winner. I'll stick with that for now. I think that sort of takes Melbourne into the grand final as the winner. Boy, Penrith look good. I just don't see them losing in the lead up to the final unless injury just bites them hard, which I guess we don't wish upon anyone, but I kind of want to see another team winning. So hopefully there's another way that the Panthers just find to shit the bed, but they haven't shut the bed for 5 years, Brian. So wishing for that is probably not going to come true, but I'm going to stick with that. I might stick with the Storm as it stands here and now, mate. They're pretty good the other night, I thought, and they probably don't have as big an injury concern as like a Nathan Cleary type setup in their spine position. So I'll probably stick with Melbourne as it stands right here, right now, I think.
Yeah, mate, I'm similar. Melbourne, Penrith grand final, and it will be an absolute cracker. All right, guys, enjoy the week, enjoy the finals, but also legitimately this week, up the mighty, mighty Redcliffe Dolphins. I hope they win the GF this weekend.